Thanks so much for having us. I'm delighted to be here. Delighted to be able to have a chat with Emma, because we were actually at COP26 together but didn't really get chatting much. So I'm looking forward to a debrief on that. And especially important because from my own perspective, I've really put the environment at the heart of everything I'm doing during my term as Lord Mayor. And I'm especially conscious that my own awareness really came from young people telling me that we weren't doing enough about it, the genuine concern and fear they felt, and the fact that I'm a mother and I'm really worried about what kind of world my son is going to live in. And that's really been what's motivated me. And I've learned so much already, but it's really through conversations with young environmentalists. So thrilled to get started. And I suppose the first question I wanted to ask you, Emma, is you have a pretty impressive CV as an environmentalist. You represented the UK at COP26, under 30 environmental educator. How did you become an environmentalist? Where did that start?
Yeah, well, just thank you everyone for having me today. I suppose it started, and it wasn't really a matter of like why did I get involved. It was why wouldn't I get involved? You know, this is our future, our livelihoods, our planet, and I think that's a really important thing to recognise, that that's the reason why you have to get involved in this stuff. So I suppose it all started locally, and then grew nationally and internationally. But no matter where I go, I always try to bring it back to home in Northern Ireland and Ballymacnabb, where I'm from, because that's where it all started. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, and I have to say thank you to the organisations that I've been involved with. They've really helped me and get the message out there. So yeah, there's plenty of more work to do, but it has to be done. Someone has to do it.
I think the organisations probably have to be grateful to you, because my sense definitely is that we know the solutions and we know the science. We're just not very good at getting people to buy into it. And I think the voice of young people is central to that. We were both at COP26. What did you think of it?
I was going into it maybe too hopeful. I probably placed too much trust in the politicians whenever I went there. And although it did come out moving in the right direction, I was still very disappointed with the results. Although there was good outcomes in terms of deforestation and methane and stuff like that, it still is just not enough. But while I was there, I did meet lots of people. I heard brilliant events. I got talking to activists, scientists of all ages. So I did take a lot out of it. But at the end of the day, it's the outcome that really matters. And at this stage in this crisis, we don't have enough time for last minute changes of phasing out of coal to phasing down. It kind of just shows that we're still not taking it seriously enough. So saying that, obviously there's still good things come out of it. It's the first sort of global climate deal that fossil fuels has really been emphasised, but saying that, we know that fossil fuels need to be emphasised. So I enjoyed my experience there, and I met a lot of people. At the same time, there was greenwashing going on, and you did have to listen to some things, and you're like, you're saying that, but you're doing another thing. So it was quite, hard to listen to some things, but at the end of the day, it's the outcomes that really matter. So we just need to keep putting the pressure on and, get that ambition going.
Yeah, I had almost the exact same reaction, and I'd been a bit skeptical about going before, because on the one hand, it's just this corporate jamboree, really. You have to call it what it is. But at the same time, it was an opportunity to promote what we're doing in Belfast, what we want for the city, and to make those connections. What I found really interesting was that a lot of the really good work is happening in cities, and cities are really working together well. Finance is such a big part of it, how you're going to finance these changes. So the work that cities are doing was impressive, and we know in Northern Ireland anyway, how to do things from a city level in the absence of government, because we had 3 years of it not that long ago. So I found that interesting, and the connections I found really useful. But I'm not sure what hope I really took for it. Maybe that we were all on the same page, and we were actually having these discussions. Maybe and the work the city was the work the cities were doing together, I think. But I don't know, I didn't leave feeling hopeful, and I'm wondering what specific bits of hope you took from it.
Yeah, well, I didn't get any hope from any of the speeches, but the hope that I got was whenever I was out on the streets with the other young people, with the older people as well, and that's whenever you really felt that the public was unifying together, and that was the hope that I got, because you need that pressure from the public, but at the same time, it is the governments and politicians have the power. So with that pressure and with that power, we need to kind of keep pushing it and keep working together. So yeah, any hope that I got was from the activists and from scientists that I was talking to, from farmers that I was talking to. That was kind of the hope that I got out of it.
So I was going to ask you then about technology, because today is very much about technology and how we achieve our climate goals. What's your perspective of that, and what hope do you have, particularly in the next 10 years, in terms of technological development, what we could be using?
Yeah, I mean, like you could see from the panels this morning, like there's so much knowledge within Northern Ireland, it's unbelievable. And like the NI Water was mentioned, they're doing great stuff. TransLink's making moves, and while at COP there was other universities within England that were bringing out new technologies for farming. So there is definitely more emphasis being put on it. And like I'm in my first year of uni, and you can see that, you know, education is really being driven in Northern Ireland for innovators and for creativity. So there's definitely a lot of hope in terms of technology within Northern Ireland, but I suppose abroad as well. Like it's globally, we're putting a lot of emphasis on technology, and technology in the past has maybe not been so good for our planet. Depends what sort of sector we were talking about. Like there was technology in fossil fuels, and that obviously wasn't good. But if we can make technology that is good for our planet, then that's all we want.
Yeah, and I think that's such a massive opportunity for our city. I say this all the time, but for so many young people who've grown up in Belfast, they either have maybe felt no hope for the future, or particularly those who have creative mindset have felt that they need to go somewhere else to achieve that ambition. So there's huge opportunity here for us to grow that industry. And if we had more of these jobs that are important, not just for the environment, the economy, but also things that people can feel proud to do, it'd be amazing for our city.
Yeah, absolutely. And young people do want to work for companies that prioritise the planet, that, you know, are looking at these new technologies. So if there's any business people out here, I would say if you want to attract the young people, really have climate at your front agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're beginning to see this from so many businesses. I've been really impressed with a lot of businesses here who seem to have a greater understanding and greater ambition than a lot of our politicians have, to be honest. So there's hope there, and hope definitely to drive it. Touching on the lack of trust and confidence in politicians, we had the Youth Climate Commission presented their report recently to Belfast City Council, and that was the key message. There's just no trust or confidence in politicians. And when you're sitting there listening to that as a politician, it can be slightly uncomfortable, and that's not a bad thing. And my feeling very much is that there have been plenty of sound bites, so we don't need any of that. The only way you win that trust back is action. For you, in terms of Northern Ireland, what do we need to do, especially in the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think COP was a missed opportunity by politicians to really regain that trust and kind of bring a wee bit of respect back to their name, because whenever you say one thing and do another, you lose all respect for what you stand for. So I think a lot of politicians missed that opportunity to kind of gain that trust back with the young people and with the public. While at COP, I went to an event with 5 young activists, and every single one of them said they would never get into politics. And there was people come from the audience saying, if it's the political will that we are lacking in, then surely that's what we need to fill. And I can understand it, because I wouldn't want to get into current politics, but future politics is what we are looking for, and we can't get into future politics unless we change it now. So if we can really get a real climate agenda all coming in at once into politics, then that should hopefully bring more priority into politics. And again, in Northern Ireland, it is disheartening whenever you have a bill that has no ambition, and it shows again that we're just not taking it seriously enough. Like, this is our future. I feel like sometimes young people have a different perspective to this than the older generation. I always use the analogy of the frog in the pot. If you put a frog in a pot of water and it's cold, but slowly heated up, it's not going to jump out. It'll stay in there and it'll die. Whereas if you put the frog into the pot when it's boiling hot, it'll jump out immediately. And I feel like that's kind of young people and older people. For the older people, it was getting worse and worse and worse, but you didn't realise it, and that's understandable. Whereas we're coming in this at the deep end, and so we have more urgent reaction to it. And I think that's what we need in politics.
I mean, I agree completely, and no political party is perfect, and you find the one that's best suited to your fit and you try and fix it, and it's the only way we'll move forward. What I think is quite interesting is when I first started in politics, I worked in the Assembly for the chair of the Environment Committee, Anna Lohr, amazing woman, and the most of our time was spent trying to convince politicians that climate change was a thing. Like, we had to convince them that this was an issue. Now, there's an acceptance that it is, and I'm not sure if it's because they actually believe it or they actually care, or if it's just they want a quiet life and it's easier to say, we need to do something. And I think one of my colleagues made the good point that some of them have gone from being climate deniers just to climate delayers and delaying that action. What I think is interesting from Belfast City Council is we declared a climate emergency in 2016, and the smaller parties in particular were able to kind of come together on those thematic issues. And I think that's really important for our politics going forward, is how we focus on those thematic issues. What do you think from a very local level? I mean, what more do you think councils could be particularly doing?
Yeah, well, I'm from Armagh, but I'm living up in Belfast now for uni. And in terms of what council could do, I know it's not sort of climate change, but even just like the recycling facilities and stuff like that, that could all be developed within the Belfast Council. And I'm sure the young people would be willing to, work with the council to make that happen. And again, the transport, that's really being developed. And I'm glad to hear about the Nicholl giving the money to the fleet of buses and dairies. So, there is cities that are, making progress. But for me personally, living in Belfast, I'm a real recycling geek, whereas the girls I live with aren't. And it's really hard to, do the right thing and do the recycling whenever the facilities aren't truly there. So that's maybe one thing that we could look at in the council.
You need to make it easy for people to make the right choice and put the systems in, absolutely. How worried are you really about all of this? We keep hearing from people, and they say that it's it's a crisis. We know it is. We know there's urgency. How worried are you, and how do we get people to act with the same urgency? How do we communicate that better?
Yeah, well, I'm scared. I'm fearful for the future. And it's kind of really hard because I'm doing my degree, and at the same time there's a code red for humanity going on, and do I have to really choose between pursuing my education or helping our planet? So it's really hard. That's a problem that a lot of young people face, and it's a horrible thing to have to think about. So there's lots of young people that have really just struggling to grasp how we're still not doing enough for this. So yeah, I am worried about this stuff, and I suppose it's not just the global south that are going to suffer, it's ourselves as well. And I think that's something how we could bring local Northern Ireland people on board, because I feel like people think climate change is only a problem that the global south suffers from, but if we can make them understand, look, this is you and your children's future and so on, then that should hopefully bring them along and make them realise that this is relevant to their lives and to their children's lives.
I agree completely. I think personalizing it is the only way people can truly empathize. And I grew up in Africa, and the people going to suffer the most at the moment are people living in those countries. And when you see what refugees are going through now, people who arrive in our city who've been fleeing war, and just how difficult their lives are, and climate refugees and the wider societal issues that's going to have, we have to act now. You know, we don't have any choice.
And I suppose, like, my parents, they weren't fully aware of this stuff until I got on board with it, and I was known as the pain in the house at the start because I was making them do all these things, and that was down to a lack of education. They were never told about this properly, they were never informed about it. So if we can really get that education in on from an early age, that's another way how we could really bring other people on board.
Keeping it on the agenda in every way. I don't think we have a huge amount of time left, but I wanted to ask your opinions on kind of individual responsibility. So I've been doing every month, I have an environmental challenge, and it's using as less plastic as possible, cycling into City Hall, and trying to encourage the public to get involved on that. What I've struggled a little bit with that is that the worst culprits and the people who really need to act are governments putting targets in law and industry. How do you encourage individual responsibility without putting it all on the individual and taking the pressure off the worst culprits? Yeah,
I think that the main thing that an individual could do would be to speak out, to use your voice, use your vote and your choice. That's what Al Gore says. That's the number one thing I would recommend anybody to do. It doesn't cost a penny, first of all, because if individuals think they need to live a greener lifestyle, they think it's going to be really expensive. Speaking out doesn't cost you anything, and that I feel could be the most effective way that you could, get the message across. Other things that individuals could do would be looking at their diet. That's a major way that you can reduce your carbon footprint. And you don't have to go fully vegan one night over. You could ease it in and make it fun and make it enjoyable. So that's another brilliant way that you could help our planet as an individual. But I think it's really important to recognise that the majority of pollution that has came from this planet has been from the big corporations, and it's those corporations that really need to be held accountable, and they have the finance to do this sort of stuff. So that's the one thing that the individual could do, put the pressure on the big corporations, because although you need to work it together. So the pressure from the public along with the power from the corporations, if we could combine these two, amazing things could come out of it.
Yeah. Okay. So interesting. Greta has said in several of her speeches, young people don't want our hope, and they don't want us to say that we're made hopeful by you. So I'm definitely not going to insult you with that, but just to say that I think that you can't underestimate the importance of your voice and your activism in making people like me and people in this room motivated to do more and to do better. So I'm not going to thank you for the hope that you bring, but I'm going to thank you for the motivation and the pressure you're putting on us to be better. And we do. And I can say that the only way we win back the trust, if it was ever there, the only way we can gain trust or confidence is by action. So thank you.
Thank you so much.